Welcome back to StingerBrainDump19. The security analysis is investigating a potential breach. Upon gathering, documenting, and securing the evidence, which of the following actions is the next step to minimize the business impact? It is D. Remove malware and restore the system to normal operation. Joe, a salesman, was assigned to a new project that requires him to travel to a client site. While waiting for the flight, Joe decides to connect to the airport wireless network without connecting to a VPN, and then sends confidential emails to fellow colleagues. A few days later, the company experiences a data breach. Upon investigation, the company learns Joe's emails were intercepted. Which of the following most likely caused the data breach? And that was policy violation. You should have used the VPN. A company is performing an analysis of the corporate enterprise network with the intent of identifying what will cause losses in revenue, referrals, and or reputation when out of commission. Which of the following is an element of the BIA that is being addressed? That is mission essential function. And that's because the BIA is composed of the following three steps: determine mission business processes and recovery criticality and mission business. A company wants to ensure confidential data from storage media is sanitized in such a way that the drive cannot be reused. Which of the following methods should the technician use? And it's shredding. A. You shred that thing, it's not going to be reused ever. And yes, I do have shredders for hard drives. I was surprised too. A forensic expert is given a hard drive from a crime scene and is asked to perform an investigation. Which of the following is the first step the forensic expert needs to take the chain of custody? It is update the evidence log. Incident response manager has started to gather all the facts related to a SIEM alert showing multiple systems may have been compromised. Manager has gathered these facts. The breach is currently indicated on 6 user PCs. 1 service account is potentially compromised. Executive management has been notified. In which of the following phases of the IRP, incident response plan, is the management currently working? And that is identification, identifying what's wrong. A stock trading company had the budget for enhancing a secondary data center approved. Since the main site is a hurricane-affected area and the disaster recovery site is 100 miles away, the company wants to ensure its business is always operational with the least amount of man-hours needed. Which of the following types of disaster recovery sites should the company implement? And that is a cloud-based site, considering it's like 100 miles away. User from 2 organizations, each with its own PKI, needs to begin working together on a joint project. Which of the following would allow the users of the separate PKIs to work together without connection errors? And that is a trust model. The security analyst is mitigating past the hash vulnerability on a Windows infrastructure. Given the requirement, which of the following should the security analyst do to minimize the risk? And that is disable NTLM. Security analyst is receiving an assessment report that includes software versions, running services, support encryption algorithms, and permission settings. Which of the following produce the report? And that's a vulnerability scanner. A chief information officer asked the company's security specialist if the company should spend any funds on malware protection for a specific server. Based on a risk assessment, the ARO value of a malware infection for a server is 5, and the annual cost for the malware protection is $2,500. Which of the following SLA values warrants a recommendation against purchasing the malware protection? It's $500. A recent internal audit is forcing a company to review each internal business unit's VMs, virtual machines, because the cluster they are installed on is in danger of running out of computer resources. Which of the following vulnerabilities exists? That's system sprawl. The security analyst is attempting to identify vulnerabilities in a customer's web application without impacting the system or its data. So you're not going to affect any of it. Which of the following best describes the vulnerability scanning concept performed? That is B, a passive scan. Passive scanning is a method of vulnerability detection that relies on information gleaned from network data that is captured from a target computer without direct interaction. Two users must encrypt and transmit large amounts of data between them. Which of the following should they use to encrypt and transmit the data? And it's symmetric algorithm. A new chief information officer has been reviewing the badging and decides to write a policy that all employees must have their badges rekeyed at least annually. Which of the following controls best describes this policy? Administrative. A software developer is concerned about DLL hijacking and an application being written. Which of the following is the most viable mitigation measure of this type of attack? And that is, all calls to different DLLs should be hard-coded in the application. An application was recently compromised after some malformed data came in via web form. Which of the following would most likely have prevented this? And that is input validation. While working on an incident, Joe, a technician, finished storing the operating system and applications on a workstation from original media. Joe is about to begin copying a user's files back onto the hard drive. Which of the following incident response steps is Joe working on now? That is recovery. He's trying to get the user back up and running, so recovering everything to how it was before. A system administrator found a suspicious file on the root of a file system. The file contains URLs, username, passwords, and text from other documents being edited on the system. Which of the following types of malware would generate such a file? That is a keylogger. As you see that all that stuff is written down right there. Keylogger. A computer emergency response team was called at midnight to investigate a case in which the mail server was restarted. After an initial investigation, it was discovered that the email is being exfiltrated through an active connection. Which of the following is the next step the team should take? That is A, identify the source of the active connection. A remote intruder wants to take inventory of a network so exploits can be researched. The intruder is looking for information about software versions on the network. Which of the following techniques is the intruder using? And it is A, banner grabbing. The security technician is configuring an access management system to track and record user actions. Which of the following functions should the technician configure? And that is accounting. The security administrator installed a new network scanner that identifies new host systems on the network. Which of the following did the security administrator install? And that is rogue system detection. The chief information officer has decided it's not cost-effective to implement safeguards against a known vulnerability. Which of the following risk responses does this best describe? That is acceptance. They're accepting the risk. Ouch. The technician is investigating a potentially compromised device with the following symptoms: browser slowness, frequent browser crashes, hourglass stuck, new search toolbar, increased memory consumption. Which of the following types of malware has infected this system? That is adware. A penetration tester has written an application that performs a bit-by-bit XOR OXFF operation on binaries prior to transmission over untrusted media. Which of the following best describes the action performed by this type of application? And that's obfuscation. An audit reported as identified a weakness that could allow unauthorized personnel access to the facility at its main entrance and from there gain access to the network. Which of the following would best describe or best resolve this vulnerability? That is a man trap. Attempting to secure a mobile workstation. Which following authentication technologies rely on the user's physical characteristics? Select two. Then we have the retina scan, so that's your eye, something you are, and fingerprint, also something you are, both physical. System administrator and key support staff come together to simulate a hypothetical interruption of service. The team updates the disaster recovery process and documentation after meeting. Which of the following describes the team's efforts? That's a tabletop exercise. A company has 2 wireless network utilization captive portals. Some employees report getting a trusted error in their browser when connecting to one of the networks. Both captive portals are using the same certificate for authentication, but the analyst notices the following certificate differences between the 2 certificate details. See that little geo-trusted thing right there? Yeah, it looks like something weird. Which following would resolve this problem? Use certificate chaining. Company A has acquired Company B. Company A has different domains spread globally and typically migrates its acquisitions infrastructure under its own domain infrastructure. Company B, however, cannot be merged into Company A's domain infrastructure. Which following methods would allow the 2 companies to access one another's resources? And that's federation. A technician is configuring a load balancer for the application team to accelerate the network performance of their applications. The applications are hosted on multiple servers and must be redundant. Given this scenario, which of the following would be the best method of configuring the load balancer? And locality based. An organization's employees currently use 3 different sets of credentials to access multiple internal resources. Management wants to make this process less complex, which is the following best option to meet this goal. That's single sign-on. An external attacker can modify the ARP cache of any internal computer. Which of the following types of attacks is described? And that's spoofing. Just think ARP spoofing. The system administrator has isolated an infected system from the network and terminated the malicious process from executing. Which following should the administrator do next according to the incident response process? That is A. Restore lost data from a backup. A new security administrator ran a vulnerability scanner for the first time and caused a system outage. A vulnerability scanner, that's not right. Which of the following types of scans most likely caused the outage? And that was an intrusive, non-credentialed scan. Ouch. Security analysis is hardening a Wi-Fi infrastructure. The primary requirements are the following. Infrastructure must allow staff to authenticate using the most secure method. Infrastructure must allow guests to use an open Wi-Fi network that logs valid email addresses before granting access to the internet. Given these requirements, which of the following statements best represents what an analyst should recommend and configure? Is D. Configure a captive portal for guests and WPA2 enterprise for staff. The security administrator is trying to eradicate a worm, which is spreading throughout the organization using an old remote vulnerability to the SMB protocol. The worm uses Nmap to identify target hosts within the company. The administrator wants to implement a solution that will eradicate the current worm and deny future attacks that may be using zero-day vulnerabilities. Which of the following would best meet these requirements when implemented? That is C. Network-based intrusion prevention system. So preventing it. Which of the following is a deployment concept that can be used to ensure only the required operating system access is exposed to the software applications? That is sandboxing. A procedure differs from a policy in that it provides step-by-step instructions for performing a task. And a user reports that she is unable to access an application from her desktop. Security analysis verifies Anne's access and checks the SIEM for any errors. Security analysis reviews the log file from Anne's system and notices the following output. And so we dropped a TCP, we received this one, and it's another. We dropped the UDP, and we did another receive. Which following is most likely preventing Anne from accessing the application from the desktop? And it's host-based firewall. Which of the following types of penetration test will allow the tester to have access only to the password hashes prior to the penetration test? See, so they're getting some information, but not all of it, so it can't be white box. White box is everything. Black box is nothing. They're getting some. So what's in the middle of those two colors? B, gray box. Which of the following threats has sufficient knowledge to cause the most danger in an organization? Insider threats. I even put it like the question before this because insider threats. Alright guys, I'm going to wrap up this video, and yeah, we got, I think, probably one more video to go. Maybe two. See how fast I get through this.